Good afternoon and welcome to day 2 of Space Symposium. I am joined by my colleague Tom Roeder. We are both teammates on the larger Space Foundation team that has literally brought the world to Colorado Springs again. Over 40 nations here, over 14,000 people, 230 exhibits. Again, what, over 40 countries? Probably over 40 countries
well
now?
Over 40 countries.
I don't think you can walk around this campus without hearing 3 or 4 different languages, and you're just sort of turning around saying, wow, they're here too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Slovenia.
Well,
and the enthusiasm from Slovenia.
And again, you mentioned that you had seen the Finns here.
Absolutely.
And again, if there's one thing, again, every symposium has a vibe, and we talked about this morning. The vibe that I heard today was partner, partner, partner. And in addition to that, we are looking for brand new approaches, and they better be sustainable.
Absolutely. It started off the morning with Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall really hitting a sustainability note, talking about new ways to begin to develop space programs through research and development programs that aren't tied to a specific line item on the budget. Right. So this whole new twist that could really change how America's defense space works. Because right now, if you're going to build a widget, you have to have a name for the widget, and all the money's tied to that named widget.
Right.
If you decouple things and you talk about delivering services instead of delivering things, holy smokes, what could be accomplished.
When all of this was being talked about, all I could think about as certainly, these are executive branch officials. Yeah. I am more than certain that there are congressional appropriators that have their own thoughts on how this ought to be done. And I'm curious that once the symposium is done and the stories get out, how some of those congressional appropriators will feel about some of that direction. Because again, the executive branch has to execute on that, but Congress has that purse string.
And we have that divided Congress right now that creates for the kind of, that's something that hangs over everything a little bit is the possibility of congressional gridlock.
Right.
And we heard Kendall address it, we heard Saltzman address it. They really don't want to see that continuing resolution. The way Kendall put it is, we don't want to lose a year of March to the People's Republic of China.
I heard the same refrain from a gentleman that I had the fortune of sitting with lunch today that talked about a continuing resolution is a gift to China and to our other adversaries.
Yeah.
And the continued use of that, they just sit back and just say, we got this game.
And I heard from another former senior defense official today that we can always come up with more money, we just can't make more time.
Right. Now, in a day full of a lot of big speakers.
Please proceed to the exits. The exhibits are closed. Please proceed to the exits. Thank you.
Yes, we also hear other voices here at Space Symposium.
Yes.
But when you're at a very large exhibit floor, and we're closing this floor down today so that people can go to their respective receptions and other activities, those things happen, so bear with us. But in a day full of big speakers with big thoughts, Secretary Kendall came here last year and uttered the refrain, China, China, China. He did something different. This time, he said, the answer to China, China, China is space, space, space. You were there. What else did he say?
One of the interesting things that Kendall began to pull the thread on a little bit is how this new growing internet in the sky, we're referring to it as the outer net, could be a brilliant tool of freedom or an incredible tool of oppression for authoritarian regimes. Right. And he had that clearly pointed at Russia and China. At the same time, though, he really worked to ease tensions, lower the temperature specifically with China, saying that there's no need, he doesn't believe that we're in a Cold War, there's no need for a war in the future, there's no war on the horizon. And I believe you heard something similar from General John Shaw.
I was at the Warfighter Luncheon with Lieutenant General John Shaw, who will be retiring in the coming months. And I have to say, if there is any of the space leaders today, that is the walking space wordsmith, if not thesaurus.
Absolutely.
He talked about the third space age today. And he talked about, and I want to make sure I'm going to go to my notes here, he talked that we are in an interwar period. And the way he divided the 3 eras of space, he started with Sputnik, and then that went to the Cold War. The second stage was literally the space station era of sort of learning to work together. But then about 2015, where space really started to become a domain for
Absolutely.
war. That's the third space era that he is talking about. And again, he talked that we need sustainability approaches. And he used a very colorful example that the crowd responded to. He said, how many of you own an RV? And there were a few hands that went up, and he said, what if I told you that you were going to buy an RV that would never be able to be fueled again? Would you buy it? And he said that would be a very limited approach. He said, we've been approaching satellite and our respective systems the exact same way. He said, we have got to build in sustainable systems. Went over very, very well from an audience that was not only glad to hear that information, but feeling challenged by it.
We heard a very similar approach from General Saltzman today. They want new tools, they want new ways to approach these problems. The message about this not being a Cold War is really aimed at those senior leaders, your senior colonels, your brigadier generals, saying that, no, we need another switch that's not marked Cold War in order to deal with Russia and China. That was really clear today, and that's something new.
We have had our share of leaders here in the past that have certainly talked about the Russian threat, the China threat. And as you mentioned, this was, again, General Saltzman's first time at Symposium as CSO. It is interesting that he looked to dial down some of those tensions. But again, this is also a guy who was also echoing sustainability approaches, don't be wed to old approaches, and we are ready to partner.
If we saw one message from the Pentagon today, it was really introspection.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than looking at the threats out there, they're saying, no, we need to look at ourselves.
Right.
And we need to come up with clear approaches and clear strategies in order to deter the threats around the world, as opposed to chasing the problems and being late to need. And that could change the ball game in a big way.
It can change the ball game dramatically, but that again shows what I will say is a dramatic shift in space thinking and execution. They are looking for ways to not default into Cold War approaches.
Yes.
They are looking for those new partnerships and alliances and relationships, be they commercial, be they international, whatever they may be. But it was very clear from the people that I heard today, do not come to us with the same old thing. We're not interested. We're not buying.
It didn't move fast enough. I mean,
right.
we heard that clearly. The average time from idea to launch on a satellite was about a decade.
Right.
And now we're looking at months as opposed to years.
Right.
That changes everything.
There's always a lot of gray matter that goes into developing whatever we do in space. I get that. But there has been a dramatic shift, not only from the military mindset, but that was also echoed today when NASA had their panel of administrators revealing their Moon to Mars approach. They were also putting together consortia, relationships about how do we move this faster. Now again, no one looks at the federal government for speed and expediency,
no.
But they came today letting them know is we're looking for speed and expediency. It will be interesting to see the accountability aspect of how fast and whether that really comes to pass. I know we've got leaders like Derek Turnier, we've got leaders over at NASA that are pushing those types of approaches. And again, when I've heard this, I couldn't help but think of all of the Snickers that were made by legacy leaders about to the brand new approaches that we now are seeing unfold in this era. Those Snickers weren't that long ago, but
No.
now there's a whole new set of companies that are achieving things that, again, others thought would not be possible. And as we've seen here on the exhibit floor and throughout the day, there are people who are ready to, answer the charge of game on. They're in.
To look at this future, it's kind of interesting that I've spent a lot of the day talking to the past. Congressman Robert Walker, General Lance Lord, retired from former leader of Air Force Space Command. And what they're telling me is the future that they dreamed of, this rapid response, the capabilities that they foresaw, the survivability of our architecture in space, is beginning to come true. This is like seeing Star Trek happen to them.
Well, it's interesting that you use that because I have seen some of that imagery used in several presentations to echo the fact this is where we want to go. But Symposium's not done. we have one more big full day that will be happening. In addition to the honors that we will be bestowing to the Space Technology Hall of Fame inductees, we've got another full day.
Oh, it's
all
gonna
of
be
the
a busy
people
day.
that here on this exhibit floor are going to get even more people to come in. And again, this is Space Symposium. There's nothing like it in the world, and I have continually heard that from folks as they've all echoed about how bigger, broader, more international, far, and even more collaborative. And people that were literally, that they would never expect to come up to talk to them about an approach, they were doing that.
I mean, this literally is rocket science, but 14,000 rocket scientists from 40 countries all over the planet could hardly be wrong.
Right.
This is the show to be at.
This is.
And what's interesting is you're seeing the collaboration happen live. You're watching the space industry and the ecosystem change in real time here on the floor. It's incredible. And this year, it's my 20th Space Symposium. This year is really something special.
There's a real change in this particular symposium. I talked this morning about this one had an air of confidence about it. It does. It's not a cockiness. They have a confidence about where this community is at and where it's going. And we're going to see more of that tomorrow at Space Symposium. Plus, the quarterly issues that come out of the Space Report. We want to encourage any of you who are watching this particular episode, take a look at the Space Report that our Space Foundation Research and Analysis team puts out. Look at our Symposium 365 website. In addition, we have the monthly Space Matters program where we bring 4 experienced space professionals talking about the various issues of the day so that you, viewers, can get a better understanding of what is happening in the global space ecosystem all the time.
Another great place to really get a feel for what's going on here, though, is social media. And so if you have a chance to look at our social media, you'll see it right now on the screen. Follow this and you'll get a feel for what's going on at Symposium on a minute-by-minute basis. Thank you.
With that, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining Catch Space and all of us here at the 38th Space Symposium. Thank you.